And back in the first episode, we actually learned that you and I had met through both of our companies that we were working for at the time. It's so funny to look back on pictures. It's understandable that I didn't really recognize you because you look so different than you did about a decade ago.
Isn't that wild? I hope I hope I keep looking a little younger. I'm not eating massive amounts of carbohydrates anymore.
You look younger now than you did then. That happens to everybody in this community. And you can just see the inflammation and the puffiness is just absolutely like gone now, where it was very, very apparent before.
I can tell. Yep. I believe you.
Well, that's awesome. Well, as of the day of this recording, you just had a race this weekend. There's always something that comes up as when I'm, doing a race myself or I'm coaching people. I try to prepare them, like maybe their last long run. I take away their iPod, excuse me, so they're not listening to music, or maybe you get your bottles wrong or something. But yeah, you just had a race this last weekend and something kind of went wrong. Tell us about that.
It did. So I was doing the Tunnel Hill 50 miles. So it's out in Vienna, Illinois. So what you do, Vienna is a super duper small town. There's nowhere to stay in the city. So everybody stays it's about 25 miles outside of the city in kind of a neighboring city called Marion. And so, you're ready, got all my fuel, got everything going, go to the rental car, and it doesn't start. And we've got about an hour and 10 minutes till the race starts. And unfortunately, like, it's turning over and the lights are coming on. So, my intuition is it's not the battery, but still, we grabbed someone from the hotel, tried to jump it. It's not starting. My wife is on the phone with Hertz. I'm looking at Uber. And because it's just kind of a small area, both Uber and Lyft could get me to the race. But I was going to be about half an hour after the start. And, and yeah, but this will renew your faith in humanity. I sometimes get discouraged with our healthcare system and many things, but it's 5:45 in the morning. I'm going around to the few people that are in the hotel that are just up, and there was a woman sitting there drinking coffee. And I said, I need help. Can you please drive me to this race? My car won't start. And God bless this woman. She was like, all right, let me go get my sister. And so she drove Corinne and my wife and I, 25 miles, and she wouldn't give us or let me give her cash or Venmo. So Kelly she said she was from Tennessee with the yellow sweatshirt. I never saw her again. I might never, but my heart is with you. Thank you so much. We got to the starting line about 10 minutes before. So I did make the start. Goodness. And, I didn't know if my wife was going to be able to meet me at the aid stations or what. And normally you kind of get your fuel ready as you're going. I had nothing there because the plan was to get there with plenty of time. Right. But no, people were amazing. The people that were watching the race drove Corinne to the aid stations that they were going to. And then a wonderful couple drove us back to our hotel. And yeah, and then, we had to get the rental car towed 2 hours, and it was an experience. You always think after running a race, like, you just can't wait to get a shower and chill. And, we didn't end up getting back to our hotel until almost midnight.
Oh my goodness.
Finished the race around 2 p.m. But, I'm beyond grateful. It was a fantastic overall experience. And, just like life, it's not always going to go how you think it is. So you just got to pivot, pray, and kind of roll with it.
That's amazing. So cool. Thank you, Kelly in Tennessee. We know you're a regular listener of Boundless Body Radio. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks for helping out with the guests. I love it. Okay, so on that note, I want to review your story. It's been a while since you've been on the show, and I definitely want to hear your personal story. Before we do that, though, let's stay on this topic of endurance sport. Like, tell us what it was like to first transition over to a low carbohydrate diet and why that benefited your endurance by so much.
Yeah. So, in 2019, I was trying to qualify for the Olympic trials and the marathon. I was following a traditional, very high carbohydrate, low fat, lower protein diet, probably eating about 400 carbohydrates a day. And, my body just all of a sudden stopped recovering. Like, I was getting dizzy and shaky and sweaty. I've had anxiety pretty much my entire life, but it went from, kind of bad to paralyzing. I was having to call out of work. And, I've talked about this before, kind of had that come to Jesus moment where, got home from work, woke up, fell asleep on the couch, woke up, and just felt like my body was on fire. And that's when, 2 a.m, I drove to 7-Eleven, got 30 pounds of ice, and was sitting in an ice bath. And so at the age of 36, I basically said, I'm done running. This is ridiculous. I'm not qualifying for any trials. I tried everything. I had tried all kinds of, when I was struggling, I reached out to sports dietitians and doctors, and they all told me I needed to eat more carbohydrates. And, I was prescribed lots of anti-anxiety medications. And so, but this is another thing you and I talked about, I think on the last podcast or the one before, that, when things are going really bad in your life, like you may not know it, but that sitting in the ice bath at 3 a.m. crying, having my wife come in and be like, maybe we should do something different. I had no idea that would be such a pivotal turning point in my life. That's when I said, I'm done running. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm 36. I'm old. I'm tired. And I just figured, well, if I'm not running, why not try a low carb diet? Because I intuitively knew they just weren't making me feel well, but I had been told my entire dietetic career, and even from when I was, very sick and in the hospital with an eating disorder, you have to have carbohydrates. They're the foundation of human nutrition. You won't have energy. You won't run. You won't heal without them. So, embracing the low carbohydrate diet was pretty scary. And, I didn't know what I know now. I've shared before that if you're going to do that, make sure you do some research. I didn't use electrolytes or anything. I would have much benefited. You can get some pretty gnarly headaches without that. But yeah, my whole world changed. Within weeks, my lifelong anxiety, was 90% better. I was calm. I could, for the first time in my life, go hours without eating. I was one of those people that if you didn't eat every 2 to 3 hours, hangry, dizzy, shaky. I was thinking clearly. I could sleep better. I felt nourished. And of course, because I felt so good, that led me to ask the question, why? I also shared, I believe on the last podcast, that my wife, at 3 weeks into this, my wife said, this is the best your anxiety has been in the 11 years that I've known you. So wow. She's a scientist, she's smart, so what is going on? And so both of us spent the next several months just digging through scholarly articles. We were both working at hospitals at the time. So we both you tend to have access to anything, a lot of times you can get stuff. Anybody can get some articles on Google Scholar, but a lot of the, I don't know if we're right, where it's more prestigious, but a lot of articles are limited unless you have access through an institution. And there was article after article after article on low carbohydrate nutrition and how it could reverse diabetes in weeks. I had patients that were diabetic for 30 years, and not just epilepsy, seeing changes in kind health. Now we have with Alzheimer's, people being able to have function, and it blew my mind, but, and again, I kind of got off topic, but as far as endurance training for me, fast forward, I obviously felt so good. I started running again. But I actually use the low carbohydrate diet to leverage, because your body, it doesn't matter if you're high carbohydrate, low carbohydrate, whatever, you want to defend muscle glycogen. You don't hit the wall in a marathon or a long race because you run out of stored body fat. And we have lots of that, even super duper lean people. You run out of stored muscle glycogen. So by following a low carbohydrate diet, I was able to train my body to burn fat for fuel at faster paces. Because normally once your heart rate is higher, once you're running faster, you're really relying heavily on your muscle and liver glycogen. But you can flip that. You can change those ratios. You can actually burn more fat for fuel when you're becoming fat adapted. And so, I went from, as you read my introduction, which I appreciate so much, I couldn't run 2 to 3 miles anymore. I was so sick. To in 2020, I was able to run 6 hours. And then, since then I've run several other races. Just 2 days ago, I did a 50 miler. And it was my fastest 50 miler. So I was pretty excited. I definitely will. I did not have enough electrolytes. I'm kind of bummed. I was rolling until about mile 40. Got a little bit of cramps, legs seized up, until I got to the next aid station where I literally just ate a handful of salt. Lesson learned. I've had about 12 people in the low carb community reach out and say, didn't you bring electrolyte tabs? No, I didn't. I will now. Anyone else needs to email me that. I got it. I don't. No, it's fine. I appreciate all the feedback. So it's really made my life beautiful. I don't feel restricted. I don't feel, deprived. People say, oh, this way of eating is so restrictive. But I do eat carbohydrates. I utilize them strategically. But yeah, my life is great. And as an endurance athlete, My recovery is better. My inflammation is overall is better. My energy is better. My sleep is way better. I used to really struggle, waking up a lot, not feeling well, on a low or not much higher carbohydrate diet. So yeah, for me, it's been a really, really powerful and helpful tool.
Would you ever go back?
One thing I've learned is I don't never say never but I am 99.9% sure unless something drastically crazy changed. No, I can't, honestly, I can't imagine myself ever going back to that way of eating, because even eating carbohydrates, even having to utilize them, like, I don't like how I feel necessarily. Right. Like obviously for race day, or even kind of leading up to that, as my volume decreases, I'm going to be eating a higher percentage of carbs than normal, but it's just like, ugh, I just kind of feel icky. It's not my jam for sure.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it, is icky. I think back on my cycling races when I was racing a lot, and you're drinking all the Cytomax and the goos. And like, as a team, if we were doing like a 3 or 4 hour ride, we would have to stop at gas stations, just pound those like cookies, that they sell there, because that's literally the only way that you can get through a ride that long if your body's burning glycogen. And that's what blew my mind when I was using metabolic carts to help assess how people were burning those two fuel sources, fat and carbohydrates. We knew that you could change the training and maybe add in more like lower intensity kind of zone 2 training, and that would bump up your fat burning a little bit. But when you change the diet, then you really see vast differences in how well we can burn fat and, again, save that glycogen, so we're not running out. You just can't store very much of it. So I would never go back to think about mountain biking for a few hours, or going out on a road bike, or anything. I don't think about food. It's just not that much of a thing anymore. It sounds like it's the same for you.
Oh, absolutely. And the change can happen relatively quickly. Like, we have some pretty good metabolic data that, people on a very high carbohydrate diet, say even in zone 3, especially in zone 4, if they're running at a higher intensity, they're burning up to 90% carbohydrate. And then when they go on a low carbohydrate diet for 90 days, so 3 months, you can almost completely flip that. You're not necessarily burning like 90%, but it's closer to like 70% fat. It's fantastic. And of course, there is that transition period where you just feel like you're, running in quicksand. But, if you can kind of get through that, it's in my opinion really the best way to eat. You not only feel better, your energy is better throughout the day. For myself, my mental health is significantly better. Overall, it's a really good way to be.